So, Assault Android Cactus now has dev commentary. Here it is. It's right in the audio menu. Dev commentary, on. So, I knew they added this when they released this for Xbox One, I believe. But, I've been waiting for it ever since on PC. So, I don't know. That has to have been, like, probably close to 3/4 of a year, at least half a year, that I've been waiting for this. So, that's awesome that it's finally here. So, let me just refresh my Twitch dashboard once, because it's being silly. Alright, I think we're fine. Yeah, alright. Okay, so let's go. So, I have my game audio up, I think sufficiently far so that it'll be audible on stream. Because obviously we want to hear the dev commentary. So I will try to keep quiet for the most part while the developers are talking. And, oh, yeah, so I'll just point out, I am wearing my Star shirt. Because, I mean, why wouldn't I wear my Star shirt for today? Alright. Here we go. So, I guess we should start with the tutorial. So just to give a quick synopsis, like, this update just came out yesterday for PC. There's a bunch of stuff in the update, actually. Let me see if it's easy for me to bring up the news post. Yeah. Okay, so, changes and improvements. The majority of androids have received buffs to their primary and secondary weapons. Lemon and Licorice have received small increases to their secondary area of effect. The window for triggering the multi-kill bonus, the surge bonus, which is when you kill enemies within very close succession, has been increased, allowing it to be utilized by more characters under more circumstances. Because really, you could, like, previously, I was surprised to see this in the patch notes, but basically, this is supposed to make scoring potentially easier for characters other than Shiitake and Coral. Because prior to this update, like, they were pretty much the characters to use for score, because surge bonus. The time bonus in campaign levels has been increased. Developer commentary can be enabled via the options audio menu. So that's what we're doing now. There's also some fixes, and actually Tim pushed out another fix, like, I think earlier this morning, because somebody noticed some wacky stuff going on. Alright, so we're going to start with the tutorial, because there might be dev commentary there too. But, here we go.
This is Junior Constable Cactus. I've caught up with the civilian freighter, and I'm on approach.
Copy that. You're looking at the Yankee Star. It sent a garbled message 3 days ago before going silent. We need you in close to scan for anomalies.
Weapons lock detected. Preparing for evasive maneuvers.
Weapons lock? That's a civilian freighter.
There's a lot of lasers pointed at me. I think it used to be their asteroid defense system.
This is beyond the scope of the operation. I'm advising you to abort the mission and retreat immediately.
And submit a mission failed report? I hate those forms. I'll take my chances with the lasers.
Listen to me, Cactus. The hangar is sealed. There's no way on board.
I think I see an opening. It's okay, folks. I'm the police. Commence being calm. That was amazing! I thought we were done for.
Well, I can't believe you hit those robots with your ship.
Oh, no problem. I do that kind of thing all the time. Save people or crash into things? Both?
Oh, that must be the edge screen effect that it was talking about in the release notes. When was that ever a thing? I don't remember that at all. So when you pick up a battery now, it shows the same kind of effect that shows up in red when you're running out of battery. It shows in green when you pick it up. I'm not sure I ever remember that being a thing, and I remember there was a thing in the patch notes about reinstated battery edge effect or something, and I was like, what are they talking about? That's what they're talking about. That's actually kind of a little distracting, but hopefully I'll get used to it. I wonder why they,
Does someone want to fill me in?
They probably did that for multiplayer purposes more than anything.
To get us. Their masters, the 4 section lords, who are supposed to be protecting us, went nuts 2 days ago, and we've been fighting to survive ever since.
We are not part of their little uprising because androids have independent cores. But that just means we're targeted along with the humans.
Section lords can't take over ships. Your Nexus core is in charge. Why is she letting this happen?
The core stopped responding 3 days ago. We were still investigating when the section lords made their move.
Then our priority is getting your core back online. She's the one who can regain control. Someone, lead the way.
Hold on there, space cop. There's 100,000 homicidal robots and 3 kilometers of ship between us and the core.
Yeah?
Who in their right mind would expect total strangers to follow them into certain death?
Oh, right. I didn't introduce myself. My name's Cactus.
Okay, we're not strangers anymore, magically. Alright, so I guess there wasn't any developer commentary in the tutorial. Alright, well, here we go. Into the main levels.
Hello and welcome to the developer commentary for Assault Android Cactus. I'm Sanatan Mishra.
I'm Tim Dawson.
And I'm Jeff Van Dyke.
And we're going to be talking throughout the entire campaign about stuff that we find interesting.
So this is the first level, and we kind of put on an elevator to give you something interesting to look at, even though the gameplay is fairly simple at this point.
Yeah, it's really important to keep the first level accessible, so using a small space like the elevator lets us bring in enemies in really small numbers while not overwhelming you. And even still, a lot of players when they get here go, wow, why are there so many enemies straight away?
Oh, I've always really liked how the elevator accelerates there. It just adds this nice sense of pace.
Yeah, it's a good way of like adding movement and action to a level that's actually fairly static.
You can get very intense, especially when it crashes down at the end. That moment shocks a lot of people because it's the first truly dynamic element across the entire campaign. It's also, a lot of people don't even notice it because there's so much happening, but I like it. It's always been one of my favorite moments in the game.
It's got a nice action beat.
I think this is the first time people get to experience the dynamic music as well. The intro, the main menu, and the tutorial are all kind of standard fare, but by now they should be ramping up into that high intensity, low intensity.
Yeah, we wanted to make the music kind of follow your play style and the quality of your play.
Yeah, I think that was your idea alone, right? Originally,
yeah, it's an idea that's been around for ages, but I just thought it would really apply to this game.
I think it adds a lot. I'm very, very happy that you came up with that.
Yeah, cool.
Alright, so that's cool. It'll keep going even if I finish the stage before they're done. So I will say the edge effect for the battery is actually really freaking distracting. I am gonna go see whether there's an option to turn that off. They should have added something to this menu to turn that off. They didn't. Wait, what about here? Nope. You can't disable the battery edge effect that they put back in. I'm gonna put a note in the Discord right now, actually. Ah, I need to get my windows back. There we go. It's in the EX options? But, really? No, I have none of those on. Well, there's no HUD. I could do that, I guess. That might turn it off. That'll also turn off the entire rest of the HUD. But no, the battery edge, the green, you know, circuit board effect when you pick up the battery, they just re-added that in this update. Anyway, let's move on. We'll live with it.
Yeah, so this is Turbine, and it's based on one of the earliest prototype levels, actually. One of the first layouts I built was this kind of round level with a couple of paths out of the main area. It was all based around trying to create choke points.
I think it had a giant fan at one point, didn't it?
Yeah, that's why it's still called Turbine, actually.
I was gonna say, that's probably
Yeah,
what
the
turbine
fan's now
means.
missing.
It plays a lot better at this scale, though. I think this is somewhere around half the size it originally was, which was just
Oh, wow.
a little bit too overwhelming for people, and
Yeah,
also
that would be easy to get
you
lost
ended
in.
up being away from the enemies quite a bit.
I also like there's a caution sticker on the ground, even though you can't fall off the edges.
Well, you have to be cautious. Give people that scare. I always enjoyed the aspect of this level the most, where there's just so many enemies at some point.
Right here.
It becomes absurd, but it's still fairly easy to deal with. It was a really great moment for me, because people would freak out when they saw it happen. They would get surrounded, they would get mauled, but then they defeat everything. It kind of works in line with the theme of the entire game, which is this sense of doing the impossible and overcoming ridiculous odds.
This is a level that has a nice sense of teaching you. So when you first play it, you're taught to get out of the middle of the level when all the enemies drop on you. But later you learn how to deal with it. So you come back to it with veteran eyes and know how to better handle threats.
Well, the game ultimately rewards you for playing more aggressively, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a central concept to the entire experience, so very important to nail it down early on. It's also just kind of a simple level, I guess, which is really nice at this early point throughout the game.
So, I want to compliment something they said about, like, when... Oh, first of all, thanks, Zaki, for the host. I guess you managed to survive that randomizer seed after all. Looked like it was pretty rough in places. Complimenting something they said about, like, when all the enemies drop on you, but you managed to survive it. I feel like this stage is the first time in the game where it, like, sort of maybe tries to force you to notice that you don't take collision damage from enemies, you only take collision damage from their attacks. Because, like, all these kegs drop on you in the middle of the level at once, and it's just like, oh my god, I'm dead. I'm not dead. Why am I not dead? Oh, Alright, moving on.
And here we have Filament, or my affectionately known level as They're Coming Out of the Walls! Which has no walls, but you get it.
So in the original earliest prototype of the game, you had a torch all the time. So wherever you faced, you were lighting up. Yeah, you're in the dark with a torch.
That's neat.
And somewhere along the lines, I realized I kind of hated games that would set you on the back of a torch. So the game became really brightly lit, and this level was left in as kind of a reference to the to that early version.
Well, I think we worked around it as well, that the enemies have their own lights and indicators that are lit up in the dark, so you always have all the visual information you need, whereas those games that are centered around characters having torchlight, especially twin-stick shooters, it's really common. They often have that problem where you don't have the visual information, and so the entire game is spent backing up and praying that, you know, you get enemies in front of you. So we flipped it on its head a bit, and you still get the visually interesting lighting, but also the gameplay just works well.
Yeah, and switching between the lights on and off is really cool. I really like the flow it has because of that.
Also, it has one of my favorite achievements ever, which is with Ollie. You can stand on the edge, shoot the cannonball, and as it runs out of energy, it will fall down and roll into a hole, and you get the nothing but net.
Yeah, that achievement was something. Alright, that was actually pretty good pace for the commentary there. Or, well, actually, also I finished the stage, like, at least 8 seconds too slow, I think, but... We'll keep moving.
This is Capacitor. This was a kind of... I like this level because it's trying to tell a story. It's a story about a giant capacitor that's charging up. It's deep.
It is very deep. I, for one, was moved.
Deep lore. Oh my god.
It's also one of the first levels that demonstrates drastic change of the play space.
Yep.
And can make people really angry. Makes them really happy when they learn to deal with it. But at first, people are generally angry when the game does something difficult.
People don't like change.
People do not like change. People like to be angry, though. I actually like to be angry at games. By now, you should have tried out some of the characters as well. I usually have tried out, a couple different characters by this point
Oh,
in
God.
the game, so hopefully people are checking them out and finding their favorite. I really didn't want people to roll into the first boss before they found something really comfortable. So that was a big priority of mine.
I think this is the first level where you really try to drop a lot of bombs on your
Oh,
head.
whoops.
Yeah, there used to be more. Not anymore. You can all thank me for that, players. I vetoed the bombs. I always vetoed the bombs.
I think
lost the
that's
entire bomb
Sanana. I can't pronounce the name correctly.
But,
We'll just call him Nart, because
And
that's
yes,
what people
that
call
entire
him.
bomb level, that's never coming back.
Boo.
Oh yeah, the bomb level. Right, that was a thing in early access.
This is a bit like Descent. I like how this level ends with another big kind of moment.
Yeah, it's one of the few instances where we got to toy with the graphics as well, right? You do that sweet long shadow lighting, which we don't see anywhere else because we use the shadows for gameplay purposes. But yeah, it's an interesting shift up and hopefully gives people a taste of what's to come.
Okay, first boss time.
Embryo. I've always really liked this level, mostly because it's got our friend Dan as the voice of Embryo. He did such a fantastic job. The other thing is we also, I always think of the music of this level as being like, I don't know, like German techno or something like that. I'm not sure why I feel that's suitable. Might have something to do with Dan. I don't know.
It does have that very dark, kind of menacing feel.
I
to
dropped
it,
chain
and
on
it works
Embryo, I'm an
great with
idiot.
His best robot voice impersonation.
Yeah.
I do like it too. And it's also one of the first times where we get to demonstrate that there's kind of a story that happens throughout the campaign. I thought Tim came up with some really clever ideas for that, with different characters having their own perspective and getting to drill down to something more than just the shoot everything gameplay.
So it was really important to me that every character in the game felt like they were part of a spaceship and are working. They're not soldiers. They're kind of repurposed things. So Embryo runs the loading bay, and I never ever rationalized why he has guns for arms.
I mean, it's obvious, right? It's super useful for any
Get like
loading
a
bay director.
high shelf.
Exactly. Some things don't need explanations.
Yeah.
Getting rid of rats.
Yeah.
What?
Is a ratting robot? I don't know.
Maybe they're attachments. Maybe he has regular hands and he's just put his gun arms on because rebellion's going down.
One of my favorite things about this boss was all the times we tested it with our friends and they would die on the first phase. Almost every time. I think every friend I've ever had died on the first phase of this boss when we were initially testing it, because they just could not figure out that you need to get close. None of them play shmups of any kind, so that was like such an interesting problem to solve, where we eventually change these bullet patterns a little bit and push you in and kind of guide you to what we want you to do. But I still think it was difficult even in the release version.
I always found it funny at conventions. It was a constant that people would play the boss and go, "Whoa, that's the hardest boss ever."
We got news for you, people. That's funny though, because yeah, like when you first spawn into Embryo's arena, the first thing that happens is you're right below him, he's right above you, he comes towards you first thing. So like, it actually like basically again like tries to force you into discovering that like, oh, he's really close to me, but his shots are going around me. I'm not in danger here. So there's like really subtle clues all over the place to try to like get you to feel more comfortable being close up to enemies. I'm actually going to increase the volume of my desktop audio because I'm afraid that this is probably really hard to hear. And since it does reduce the rest of the game audio while it's playing, I think that'll work. So let me up this. Alright, I've upped it as much as I can without filters. Alright, going into the second section of the game now.
Congratulations, by now you have defeated Embryo and are on to the second phase of the game, Hive. Well, this is kind of a cool moment because we get to introduce the first unlockable character in World 2, and not everyone's going to play them, but I think a lot of people are going to play Starch.
Yep.
We really
You don't
tried
say.
to pick a fun character for the first unlock to encourage people to try and branch out, and I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, I think she's the micro missiles are just a really fun and visually spectacular weapon, and you know, the character's a fan favorite as well. So a lot of people just react really well to Starch in general. They get the humor.
I love the music in World 2 as well. It's so different from the first world. It just, I hope it surprises people, and that's kind of across the entire campaign. I generally hope the game surprises people, but especially here.
I tried to make it so that as the level progressed, like the music really picks up in tempo.
Oh, I missed firepower.
And also, I don't know, it's like from a mood point of view, the music initially has a real sort of happy tone to it.
Yep.
Which not all of the music in the game is like that, but it just makes for a nice contrast.
But then it gets really
I
hectic
think
and
it's
less happy.
interesting as well that across the campaign, the levels get longer, and the complexity of the music kind
Whoops.
of increases to match because each track needs to fill more space. So you get the first taste of that here, but it just continues across.
Art-wise, I really wanted to go somewhere different after the first world. Like I was almost doing the Ready Brown loading bay to just kind of get that out of the system. And so the follow-up for that was the greens and the white medical bay theme.
It looks beautiful, and it's kind of intense as well. I actually like this level for a similar reason to I like Turbine, because players already think, oh, they can't possibly throw more enemies at me, and then we throw like 100 wasps on the screen at once, and just really freak people out.
That's nothing. He ain't seen nothing yet. I guess if they're going to talk about each unlocked character, I should probably swap to the one they're likely to talk about for the first level of each zone. I'll try to remember that going forward.
So this is Influx, aka the level from the trailer that everyone remembers. Probably one of the most visually eye-catching moments in the game, I think.
In some ways, I regret that it's so deep in the game, as I've learned later in my life.
It's not
people
that
have
deep.
Very, very short attention spans, myself included.
I guess.
And this is...
But it's also in the
already
demo.
midway through World 2. But when people get here, they're genuinely like wowed a lot lot of the time, which is really lovely.
Especially like when the
if they're
level
not wowed by me
transition
dropping
happens and
change.
the blocks fall away and fall into place, and it just feels awesome when it happens, and it's really exciting.
Surprisingly, this was one of the first things I ever worked on from the programming perspective with Cactus, and it just actually worked, and it played well, and that shocked me because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. It's very, very simple in the back end as well. It just maps a pixel grid to every block, and I can paint new versions of the level and kind of get it up and running very quickly, and that's why
neat.
I was able to make all these interesting patterns and make them
really
work
cool.
so fast.
It's an interesting example of generating chaos and complexity out of a small number of parts. A lot of the look is based on animations being offset, so you get this beautiful ripple effect when the levels transform.
Oh yeah, I remember when you came up with that idea, because I had them all just transforming sort of instantly or at a set rate, and then you worked out that it would be cool to transform them based on the distance to the player, and then use that in 4-player as well. So it's always kind of relative to where the characters are and will always ripple out from their position.
It's practical as well, because it means that the ground always changes first under the player, so they're less likely to run into a transforming block.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks like that in the game where you think something's really dangerous, but it's oftentimes we're pretty lenient.
Alright, that commentary was really well timed with how terribly I played that level. But yeah, it's funny that they comment about this being far into the game. I feel like it's not that far into the game. However, there's like this is like the sort of the first taste of really dynamic level design, and you get a lot more of that in Zone 4. which is like levels 16 through 20.
So this is Oxygen. I actually really like this level. It's very simple. It's basically a donut.
Yeah, but you have mines in
there's
it.
a bunch of interesting
That's why I don't
dynamics
like
you
it.
get out of it, and I liked what I was able to do with the lighting. Again, it's another level where there's a kind of story progression through from evening to morning.
Yeah, I remember when we learned that lesson. Actually,
I didn't even realize that. I am an
before we
idiot.
worked on Cactus, we were working on little jam games and things, and one piece of feedback we always got with anything arcadey was that the sense of progression would feel lacking if there wasn't a visual element. You could push through and have harder enemies and more crazy things going on, but something like the aesthetic changing between different color grades of blue and red and green always gave people a much stronger feeling about the fact that something has changed, like they move forward in the progress towards completion. I think this level works really well because of it, not in spite of its complexity, but kind of together with its lack of complexity.
A huge inspiration actually came from the old Brisbane airport. They had this kind of circular terminal with trees and stuff inside it, where you could see it from as you walked around it. And so it was like, it's something I drew on when I was trying to figure out how to visually depict this level.
I think this is one of the few levels in the game where I didn't go back and rebalance the bomb-only wave that you are so obsessed with in your level tuning.
Oh, and the number of times that's taken me out, I tell you.
Oh, yeah.
People got to dodge.
I make no apologies. It was
Yeah,
fun.
I dodged about 10 times during that section right now. Heh. I guess that's a point. Hey, Dragonos, how's it going? How's it going? I guess you were playing this earlier. But yeah, I never equated, like, I always was, like, mildly aware of the color change to that level as you go through it, but it never occurred to me that it's, like, day into evening into morning. So that's actually really cool how they have that inspiration. Alright, conveyor belt time. Let's see what they have to say about this.
I find this level a lot of fun to play. The way the moving tracks on the ground mess with your movement is fun and frustrating at the same time.
I
Yep.
always get amused when people play this level and they completely miss what it was inspired by, because it was a very direct inspiration for me when I was designing it. And we were playing a lot of Bomberman.
Huh.
And yeah, it's just, I think it's great. I like this level.
So the other visual inspiration, again, like the previous level, was airports, including the little flashing
Baggage claim?
flashing hazard lights at the top. Yeah.
It also is one of the craziest levels for bullet patterns yet. You get bullet hell with Embryo, but this is the first level where we dump multiple turrets plus a bunch of drones simultaneously, and it gets pretty crazy. I always appreciated that about it as well.
I really like the bits where the
Oh,
kegs
damn
start crawling out of the holes, because you often get like 4 kegs crawling out of a very small hole, and it really looks like they're just pouring out of somewhere.
What
Yep.
about the bits where the platforms start popping up and down, and you're trying to shoot your long-range weapons like a missile or a cannonball, and you get a perfect shot lined up, and it's going to get you that full chain, get you that S+ ranking, and the platform pops up and blocks your shot. Do you love those moments? Because I can tell you from my experience on the internet, not everybody loves those moments. But yeah, I think by and large this is one of the more interesting levels in World 2.
Those bloody, what do you
Yep,
call
it
it?
just blocked that
Toaster
shot.
The bane of my existence.
Oh, they're great.
You need your toast.
They've
Micro
toasted
missile
me a
saved
few
my
times.
chain there.
The rockets can be very difficult to see amidst the chaos at some points in this level, it's true. Especially towards the end when everything's moving so quickly. But it does kind of work, and I think the chaos adds to its charm.
Vespula.
Let's see what they say about this.
Voiced by my wife, Angela, actually.
Yep.
And I thought she did a really good job. This level, you know, you watch people play it and they struggle against it. and they think, wow, this is so much harder than Embryo. Just watching people try to deal with the waves of wasps, it's amazing, you know, that it gets even harder than this.
I really like the fact that people are just never sure that what the game is going to throw at them, and I think this boss does a perfect job of that. You're saying, yeah, she's super hard compared to Embryo, and that's kind of wonderful. You think the game is going to be all bullet hell, and it's going to be kind of Embryo-like, and you just have to learn the patterns, and then you have this, and it's, oh, there's 100 wasps on screen, and they're circling around, and they're moving out to get you. And also, yeah, Ange does a fantastic job with the voice. She's appropriately kind of menacing, but not evil, and just really, really good.
It has that kind of melodramatic announcement to things as well. She, yeah, did a really good job. I think I'm still most proud of the way Vespula turns into a ball. That was a idea I had, and I had no idea if it was going to work. But I was too scared to tell anyone how unconfident I was until I modeled it. Yeah, it ended up working really nicely.
It works super well, except when people try and shoot the ball.
Yeah.
The behavior of the wasps is sort of mesmerizing in a way.
I love it. It's like a fluid dynamic.
Yeah.
You get enough enemies on screen, and they just move like a pattern.
Interestingly enough, in our speedrunning community, they regard Vespula as the hardest boss because there's the most chance for things to go wrong, which I think is really great, that this early boss can cause the best players in the world so much pain just because of the nature of her style of chaotic attack. She's not the hardest boss to defeat, but she is the hardest to consistently perfect. And that's kind of unique. She also has some really great dialogue. I like Vespula's dialogue. I like the boss dialogue in general. We don't talk about that enough, that each of the bosses has like a really strong connection to the different androids and gets their own point across depending on who you're playing.
I kind of like the idea that like Embryo is a bit of a bully and you kind of feel alright about taking him down, but Vespula's got a hint of tragic to her, that you're supposed to kind of be like, oh, you don't feel super great about how things came out.
Well, also there's a backstory between Vespula and is it Lemon? Yeah, and so like there were times when they were buddies.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Vespula was her mentor. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah. So there's this in the dialogue you can see a bit of that in there.
Yeah. So for those who haven't played this game, I have the boss dialogue turned off right now. But each character has different dialogue with each boss. So like seriously, you can go through the game 9 times, or at least fight all the bosses 9 times. Just to see the different interactions, which is pretty cool. I guess depending on whether you call Collider a boss, like I would totally disagree that this is the worst boss for speedrunners. If you count Collider as a boss. Also, the final boss is arguably probably worse than this. But yeah, Vespula is uniquely challenging in ways that the next 2 bosses aren't. But each boss in this game tends to have its own unique challenges that it adds. Alright. We did say that I was going to change characters in preparation for them potentially talking about the one you unlock in each zone. So we're going to play one level as Aubergine. This is like the least fun way to play this level, and this is one of my favorite levels, but we'll do it anyway.
Checkpoint. The best idea I never had.
Heh.
This is such a cool level.
I love this level.
Tim, you have anything to say?
Yeah, so this was a really important switch up, I think. We got to the point of the game where it felt really important to show a different type of gameplay and something that they had never seen before.
And the moving through the ship now, like, was such a huge
best damn
step.
part of this freaking level.
Simple, but
yeah,
you know,
it's conceptually just another arena. But
yeah,
it's located.
The arena is moving around the player, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's cool.
I always had trouble with understanding how this level would work before we actually built it, because if you're moving through the level, then how do we encourage you to defeat the enemies? How do we box you in? How do we get the battery going well? But it just works so well. It's so much fun. I think if the whole game was like this, it would feel tiring and just
Yeah, I
not
could see
very
that.
interesting, but as a one-off or a two-off across the campaign, it's...
But I love these levels.
Yeah, it's one I'm pretty sure that the seams would show if you try to do it too much. But as a palette refresher, it works really well.
Always liked how you made the wall lights react to the music.
Yeah. Some people don't realize, but they're literally bouncing off Jeff's music.
Is it? I wasn't sure if it was static or
Like a
actually based on the
frequency
music.
analysis or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although if you turn off the music, it does do some random
I just have to sample pill and noise because I no longer have an audio stream.
That's amazing. I didn't know it was based on the music. I was like, nah, it's
What a
probably
great
just an
track.
animation.
It's so relentless.
It for me it was I quite like that song. It's I'm partial to it, and it's there's sort of a danciness to it, but I feel it ties in with the aesthetic of the world as well. You know, there's almost like a nightclub.
Almost like a
Fire
nightclub.
Zone 3 has that feel to it, that go, go, go. It's very movement oriented in all the levels as well.
Yeah.
That was actually a pretty well. Oh, that was a pretty slow checkpoint, but that was pretty well-paced commentary. But yeah, I absolutely love Checkpoint and Relay are the only two levels that are like that, where they proceed like through rather than just being a static arena that boxes you in. And I love them. And like, I know there's not going to be an Assault Android Cactus 2, but like, I would love for there to be an Assault Android Cactus 2 where there was more of that. But it probably would require changing things up quite a bit in the formula. But yeah, I always wondered if the walls were actually reflecting the music, or if it was just, you know, an animation, because like I was like, it could just be my mind playing tricks on me, trying to convince me that it's in sync with the music, but no, apparently it actually was. So that's pretty cool. Like, Jeff did a ton of cool things for the sound design and soundtrack of this game. One thing they haven't talked about at all, and I guess it's hard to talk about and demonstrate at the same time because the audio commentary ducks the audio of the game, but like they haven't talked about all the audio cues in the game, like the chirp when your secondary is ready to use again after overheating, like when it fully cools down, and the audio cue when you're low on health. There's audio when you get hit, and there's like really useful audio cues in this game. Alright, I am going to switch back to Starch before we do anything else. They didn't talk about Aubergine at all. Watch, they'll probably talk about her now. Oh yeah, the one other thing I wanted to mention was, did you see the hallway in that level? The hallway that usually has all the mines and everything? That was the shortest hallway I have ever had. Because I used the Singularity, and it seems like it sucked half the mines right towards me before I even entered that long hallway. So that hallway is like a variable length depending on how long it takes you to kill all the enemies in it. Or, I guess, how long it takes to spawn all of them based on you killing all the enemies. And that was like a 2-segment hallway or something. That was ridiculous. I'm reading what Dragonos was saying now. I feel like I feel like at least through Phase 3... Hey, someone! Pineapple, yep. I feel like at least through Phase 3, like you're saying, you want firepower for Phase 3 ideally. I'll fall back to Accelerate if that doesn't work, just so that I'm not losing weapon energy. But yeah, I can definitely see that. I feel like even with Venom, you tend to know what you're gonna get or aiming to get. But again, as you get further into the fight, it's harder to choreograph that. So yeah.
So this is Transit, set on a moving train, which is just like Descent. It's the second time we had a small gameplay space set against a moving background, but I was particularly proud of this level. There's a lot of detail going into the track work and the train itself.
I always thought the turns were the interesting part for this level.
Yup.
The train itself and the track work is pretty cool, but the way that it interacts and confuses you and tricks you, and I know this is a common theme with a lot of my comments across the commentary now, but surprising people is always good. And this level surprises a lot of people when it twists and it turns and they get pushed around.
The way the perspective changes with the camera rotating and stuff.
Yeah, like I love that first turn. It feels like it's just being interesting, but it's actually setting up the laser sweeping you. It's a very functional kind of setup.
I really hope people have figured out how to weapon swap dodge by now.
Like I just failed to do a couple
now,
times.
and then the laser comes and they don't know what to do. And even though there's two solutions, you can weapon swap dodge through it, or you can stand behind an enemy.
I missed a battery.
And let
That's
them
bad.
tank the laser. A lot of people just don't figure out either of those, and I'm a bit sorry for that I don't convey things better. But I think when you do know or figure out those strategies, it's one of the most interesting and fun parts of any level across the game.
You can also stand behind the crates, but then we remove the crate that you're standing closest to. That's where the next enemy spawns out of. Which
I might
always
battery
like
out
it's
because
got
I
that
did really
sense of At
bad.
the start, you can just stand behind any crate, but by the end, there's only one crate left.
What's in the crate? What's in the crate? Which you'll find out shortly, I'm sure.
I didn't know that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm gonna change the way I play now.
Yeah, you can actually do it strategically by standing next to a crate that you're most okay about losing.
You can tell that Tim was the primary idea man behind this level because, again, it's got multiple waves with just bombs.
Bombs are great. Everyone loves bombs. I put the bomb tanks in as a joke, but nobody stopped me.
Ha ha ha.
The full game.
Bomb tanks are great. You won't see those for several levels, though. For now, just regular wasp tanks. And lasers! I love lasers. I forgot to mention this in Checkpoint.
I like how the firepower upgrade protects you from the lasers. If the little drones caught the laser.
Yeah, that was a total lucky accident that I kind of made sure it worked throughout the game.
It saved me a few times for sure.
They're your little buddies. Look
Pretty
at
sure
them,
it saved
like
me earlier in
cute
this level.
faces, and they do neat things. I love the firepower drones, especially if you finish a level and you have them, and they just chill out there and they do their thing and they spin around. The firepower drones are great.
Yeah, they actually have like special behavior because normally they just float next to you, but if you finish the stage with them, they actually have a little bit of drift animation and they're triggering off their idle animation, so they look more interesting.
The more you know.
Wait a minute. Oh, they don't always do it together either. That's fun. So I actually managed to survive that despite missing a battery and basically being down to the last second at one point.
So here's a level that not a lot of people are going to talk about loving because it's kind of evil. Heat. I'm super proud of this level though, despite people hating it.
It is really
They hate it
interesting.
for all the right reasons. That's because it's mean. It's mean.
Well, you put all this stuff in there that looks like, oh, that's a little safe spot. Oh, no, it isn't. And oh, this is safe in here. No, it's not safe.
Well, yeah, it teaches an important lesson. There is no safe spots.
No, there is no safety, but
This
it's
is an unsafe game.
It's much safer than it ever was in the early stages. I remember the first version of this level where we didn't have this open middle section. Like there was a pathway, but it was closed off at the edges, and it was almost impossible to escape death when the fire was coming.
What
for
hit
you.
me?
But now with the open section, it's good. And we also do a lot of changes now as well with the fire turning off, moving fast, moving slow, double fire, all that kind of good stuff.
I feel like the thing nobody notices in this level is all my pixel art on the walls. It has ugly little fire animations, but the
Too busy to
the
notice
animations
it.
tell you what's going on. So when the fire's regular side up, it's telling you it's coming out one of the burners, and when the fire goes upside down, it's coming out the other burner. And when the fire gets really huge, it's coming out both burners.
Huh.
And then during the point where it stops, you get cooling written on the wall.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
It's helping you out, but nobody notices.
No, yeah.
That's amazing. That is seriously amazing. I definitely never
noticed
noticed that. You're
eventually.
correct.
Even though I worked on the game, but you know, other people probably notice more than me.
An early version.
He didn't
of the
notice it
game,
either.
It does a quick spin around at one point, and with bombs dropping.
Yep.
And the early version actually kept spinning around fast until all of the bombs were gone.
Oh god.
Which meant if one bomb managed to escape and get into a relatively safe spot, it could just spin around over and over again.
That's amazing.
That.
And
One
terrible.
of the more interesting things about this level from speedrunning versus score attack is that if you're running this level for speed, you can kind of make use of the fire. I think there's a couple levels that are like this with red damage where you sometimes want to let the red attacks which damage both players and enemies unlike
I tried to show that off as they said it.
Actually
Not
do
sure
the
I
work
succeeded.
for you. Whereas if you're score attacking, you want every kill, so you need to try and fight against it. So there's a nice little divide there in what your goal is and how you have to play.
Alright. Next level's a pretty long one, so they'll have plenty of time to make comments. Let's see what they have to say. Because they already commented on the first conveyor belt level.
So this is Revolution. This was another level that was prototyped very early on. This is kind of the first idea for a moving level that would have parts that would rotate around itself. And it's kind of, I've always thought of it as a really visually interesting level. It's,
Yeah.
So much is going on.
Hey, it's got more pixel art that people probably won't notice. Lots of it.
It's got the arrows. I've noticed that
So
before.
you've got the arrows on the side that show you which direction they're going. I think they changed speed as well, right?
Yeah,
Based on the
they've got a
rotational
bunch
speed.
they scroll and animate between different states.
If only this game wasn't moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, people might notice these things. But I think it looks cool. This is one of my favorite levels for the fact that it has so many lasers. Any level with a lot of lasers is...
Here we
just
go. Here comes the
super
laser.
stylish.
Yeah, I really like the way the laser plays with the rotating blockers, so you get this kind of strange lasers shooting out at odd angles.
Oh, that wasn't well handled there.
How many people do you think actually ride the circle around as I sort of intended when I was designing some of this gameplay?
It's kind of hard. Like I feel like sometimes it feels like your friend, but a lot of the times it just feels like a frustration, which is a shame because it would be nice if it was more practical, I think.
Yeah, I remember in the early prototypes, the blockers on the end were full length of the rotational area, so you couldn't walk past them. And it made the spinning a lot more of your enemy than your friend. Now you can kind of use it. I use it personally. I use the accelerate and I spin around with it and
Stupid wasp.
avoid all of the things that can hurt me. But yeah, I think it's a bit 50-50 in terms of how people view the spinning.
The accelerate actually reduces the damage you take, doesn't it?
Yeah, the accelerate will give you a sort of evasion on damaged input
Yeah.
because you're moving so fast that
You can easily collect bullets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to compensate, it actually like ignores every third point of damage.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
it's
Oh
a
god.
fairly essential power up if you're trying to play recklessly, and also early on if you're trying to collect all the pickups to get a higher weapon level, since it will suck in everything.
Yeah.
But later on, you may want to prioritize a little bit more things like firepower if you're going for just pure scoring. I really like the way the three power-ups play off each other, and there's never a best power-up overall. There's only the best power-up for this moment in this situation, in this exact scenario.
Firepower is
I'm
usually
really
still the
proud
best
that none of
power-up.
the Power-ups lost their relevance at any time. Like, at times it's a good strategy to do something, but it's never the wrong strategy in the end.
Same with the characters to some degree. They all kind of work well and play off against each other across the campaign.
Alright, time for third boss. This will be interesting to hear them talk about because one unique thing about this boss is it has fewer phases. And that's kind of part of what makes it seem more challenging.
Right, so this is Justice. I
Justice
really
reigns
like
from
this
above.
level. This boss is voiced by Tim, if I remember.
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun to do. Music-wise, almost like a circus or something, or I don't know. Definitely, I was thinking deranged robot. and I always liked the way the fence post mechanics worked, and that you could you could take them out, and it was to your advantage to take them out. But obviously, and if you got distracted by everything else, then and you didn't take care of the fence posts, you just end up in this hell grid.
I think this was the most nerfed boss
Huh.
throughout development.
Really?
He's a tricky one. He deliberately has this kind of 3-phase structure, and his first phase is very defensive, which I think just made him like a unbreachable wall for a lot of players.
In some ways, I'd actually describe this boss as one of the few pseudo failures of how I thought about things, because the 3 phases, while they're interesting and they're different from any of the other bosses, they're so hard for people to get used to. This idea that you need to fight through a whole phase just to get a new battery, it just seems so alien to people. And that's why
That's how they
I guess
work,
we
though.
didn't do it again, even though we made it work here with Justice. It just took so long to gradually refine him and refine his difficulty and his attacks. Remember the first version, which I could S+ quite comfortably because I understood the design of the 3-phase structure. He fired like twice as many capture balls, twice as often.
What?
Yeah. I mean, I really liked how themically he ended up being all about containment and imprisoning, because it fits very well with his character. But yeah, he was a little bit overboard.
Yeah, brutal boss, but also one of the most visually spectacular. And as Jeff said, he's got like this crazy circus intensity music thing going on, which I really dig as well.
I think my favorite element was that people probably don't notice is that in his final phase, when he chest beams you, his head switches to a skull.
I
Also,
think
a lot of
I've
people don't
noticed
even
that.
notice he throws his head at you and replaces it,
Grows a new one, yeah.
which is a cool little trick. He has multiple heads apparently.
They each do a different thing.
I think I've noticed the skull before, but I kind of forgot about it also.
Alright, we're moved into World 4, and the game is getting pretty deep by now. You've unlocked a bunch of characters. I really, really hope people play the different characters.
I forgot to switch to
I
Shiitake.
think that they do, based on anecdotal evidence of watching them play and leaderboards and things, but I really hope they try Shiitake anyway, because she's so much fun.
I'll do her on the
this
next level.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say those mines are just really fun to play with, and laying them in the right spot and having the enemy walk into them just feels really, really good.
Yeah, she's probably one of the most tactile characters to play as. That sensation of every shot just feels so strong.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
punchy.
especially when you line up a whole whack of robots all in a row.
I really like this level. It's one of the larger levels, and it feels like it's almost one of the most representational levels in the game, where you get a big mix of enemy types, a lot going on, the level's constantly shifting, but you kind of can really cut loose.
It also has a very simple concept that ends up in a lot of complex situations, which is a hallmark of the better levels in the game for me. So the platforms that are shifting out are just kind of ones that aren't near you, so they're not going to cause them most. They have no enemies, you're not on them, that kind of thing. So you can actually control which platforms drop away and which ones fall in if you're paying really, really close attention. But by having this simple nature of how they react like that, and then having a lot of variance in the type of platforms that can change, I find that it creates enough chaos that it's really exciting all the time. So I like that about it too.
I find World 4, which is set outside the ship, is one of the most interesting visually, probably the most ambitious worlds, I think, which is kind of cool. Like, it feels like you've worked up to this epic. You can see the ship in the background, you can see stars at times. It's a really nice feel compared to from going from inside to outside.
I know in the music I tried to really push the sci-fi sound of it, and thinking about being, floating around in outer space. Certainly at the beginning part of the song just makes me think that.
I think the World 4 music is my favorite stage music, and second favorite track of the entire game, behind Little Android, which just makes me crack up every time I hear it. Whenever you watch anybody play the game, somebody picked it up and they're streaming and they don't know me, somebody who has no connection to me, and they play it and I watch, and eventually they get to a stage that's too hard and they die, and they put the controller down for 20 seconds and start singing at them about
Uh-huh.
Not feeling their face or their fingers and different things. That is a golden moment.
Yep,
It's
absolutely.
It sneaks up on people because it takes so long for the vocal to come in, so they just think it's just sort of moody music.
Well, they'll
you
miss
know.
it the first few times.
Yeah, they will.
Like Nat says, it's only when they sit to it. I love the art style of this whole world is actually based on space stations and solar panels and stuff like that. You know, keeping an orange theme because each world has its own color palette. But I was really proud of how this one managed to kind of channel some of that kind of International Space Station imagery in its own way.
I think it's great. It's hard to use orangey brown and make a cool looking art style, but it works really well here.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple of people, I think they go by Pixel Monsters, if I recall correctly, on Twitch. I think it's Pixel_Monsters. They don't stream very much, but one time they happened to be streaming this, and one of the guys had played this before, and then one of the other guys, like, so finally, you know, they game overed, you know, multiple times, and they just left it there, and this one guy is just like when he starts hearing the words, he's like, wait, there's words, what? I'm dropping frames. Not on my end. It may be the low latency thing doing it. I have dropped 482 frames, according to OBS. But the low latency has seemingly done that to people sometimes. And it could be a combination of just what bitrate I have set and like how it catches up when it's on low latency mode. But anyway, so yeah, this so these three guys, and one of them starts singing along to it because he knows the song, and the other guy's like, "How the hell do you know the song?" That's actually a lot of latency. I could have sworn I still have low latency mode on here. Let me double check. I mean, I don't think I can change it right now. What? Hello? I clicked on that. Wait. Damn it, which frickin' page is that on? There's multiple settings pages and it's very confusing. I'm not on low latency, I'm on normal latency. So I'm actually really surprised that it's doing that. I'm not on low latency. That explains a lot. Because yesterday at the beginning of my stream, my preview was only 6 seconds delayed from myself, even on normal. But then by the end of it, it was like 10 seconds delayed. Alright. I said I was going to play a level as Shiitake, so let's do that.
Okay.
No, I haven't touched that setting, like, all weekend, so if I'm on normal now, I was on normal yesterday, too. Alright. Time for relay, and this is actually, I prefer using Shiitake for this level versus Assembly. So this is actually good, but remember what they were saying about her feeling, like, tactile and punchy, and how her propeller mines are fun and stuff. I underuse the propeller mines like crazy, but I'll try to show them off here. But so Shiitake has a railgun. I said before that Shiitake and Coral were always like the best for scoring because the surge bonus really only applied to them. Much more than any other character. You would really have to try to get a surge bonus with other characters. And actually, I haven't been paying attention. I should be looking at that. Like, how often I'm getting surges. I may have to, like, rewatch this myself later. Because they did increase the window for surge bonuses, which is when the chain meter shows red and gives you an extra multiplier on it. But alright, let's go into Relay and see what they have to say about the other non-arena level in the game.
So this is Relay, the second moving level in the game, alongside Checkpoint, and it's kind of cool. Like, I liked that we got to revisit the concept, and I liked that we got to revisit it in a different way. You know, Checkpoint is enclosed and you're running through corridors, and this is like you're just floating in the middle of nowhere. You can see the panel snapping off behind you. It really feels like you're in a perilous situation. Even though mechanically it's pretty similar.
Yes, snapping off behind you. Not at all the same as when the doors close. I can tell you, technically it's totally different.
Huh.
I promise. Believe me.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, it works pretty well. I actually think this level's a good example of why this style of gameplay wouldn't work across the entire game, because by the end of the level it is starting to feel a little bit tired, but it's also refreshing and entertaining that it comes back and you get
Why
to
is there a
do it
wasp
again.
there?
So I really liked that. I thought it worked out well. And also because I did the design of this one, so obviously it's the best. That's how I qualify the different level qualities, by the way.
This is an interesting level. You're literally moving across the ship. You can see, depending on how far you move, you can see more or less of the spaceship, which was actually really hard to line up because at times if you got it wrong, you'd end up half embedded in the ship.
I remember how much care and attention you put into the design of the different areas that you go through and the ship, and trying to keep the whole concept together, and then you get to World 4 and you actually get to see huge chunks of it in the background. And I think the sense of place helps. I certainly hope people get a sense that they're on a real place and that as they travel through each level that they're progressing somewhere. So I think, yeah, this was a really cool level because you get to move so far and you get to see so much that it works.
I think that's a cool aspect of Cactus in general, is that, like, on the surface, you know, it's a twin stick shooter and there's enemies and you shoot them. That's that. And the levels have this cool look and stuff, but that if you look into it, there's a lot of depth and backstory and everything from the level select to, like, you know, this particular world and how we're outside of the ship. Everything is linked and everything ties into each other with the game design, the backstory, the level design, the characters, their purpose. You know what I mean? It's all very well thought out, and everything's connected and has a purpose. And yeah, I think Tim, you did a good job figuring all this out.
It was interesting. Like, everything is in the service of gameplay. Like, everything is about making the game feel and play right. But at the same time, it was really important to me that the game could be something people could love. Like, that if you dug into it, if you thought about why the levels were that way, that you'd find something interesting and not just be like well, we did it that way.
Yeah. Yep.
I love that. I feel like we managed to, between the three of us, we managed to do that across every facet of the game. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that in the design of the world. There's always a little bit more than you expect when it comes to the lore, or the setting, or the sense of place, or the music with its different layers. And I hope people feel it with the gameplay as well, with some of the character balancing and the designs and the interactions that are there.
And even some of the enemy waves. Like, there's a lot of thought I know you put into combining certain enemies with other enemies to give specific feelings.
Yeah, the combination of enemies. I think there was a great talk at one of the conferences once on how they combined very few enemies in some of the classic arcade shmups to create a huge array of experiences, and we tried to do as much of that as we could, where if you're very conscious about matching the blue toaster dogs with the laser enemies and you get gripped but you can't move, it creates such a different sense of pace and feel to some of the other gameplay styles. So I really do hope that people like that.
Alright, so you can see how terrible I am with Shiitake. Also, I failed to address Saoirse's first message about finishing Overload's campaign. Hopefully I can do that today. We'll see how far I get.
Focus. The level that was originally meant to be giant panes of glass, but I think it's actually kind of cooler the way it is now.
Panes of glass sounds pretty cool. I don't know, man.
Discs that shatter away and you fall down. You totally fall, by the way. None of this is faked. I can guarantee it. Just like I guaranteed.
Oh man, he's destroying all the magic from me right now.
I'm a doctor.
Oh, what? Really? I dropped chain already?
Yeah, I really like the layout of this level. Like, effectively, you're just moving from a smaller game space to a larger game space over time. But it has a lot of character and really benefits from being outside as well. You get to see you're getting close to the ship every time you fall down.
Yeah, you're moving down, you're crashing things out. It's got that real nice sense of progression that we tried to do across the game. For me, I love the way the pillars are kind of moving down with you and creating this different play space. They're not there at first, and then you fall down and there, and then it crashes away and they fall with you. Getting that all to work properly and play well with the different enemy waves was a little bit challenging, but it works really well. And also, this level introduces more lasers. I don't know if you know this, but I love lasers.
Is this the level where you introduced Reapers, or were they?
This is the Reaper level. This is the level where I originally had 3 times as many Reapers.
Oh god,
and then
what?
Initial people that played the game got very angry with me. This is a theme, I feel like. At this point.
This level also has the blue
Oh, God.
toaster dogs with their little laser leash thing.
I mean,
Yeah,
those were in the
yeah.
first level of this zone
The
also.
only enemies in the game that can't actually hurt you, but people really, really hate them.
I'm trying to remember if
Whoops,
there's a
what-
way you can avoid their tractor beam.
You
or
can run behind a
or-
pillar if you break line of sight.
Yeah, that's it. And,
Oh.
and I've made them growl. It's really hard to hear the growling amongst all.
They
the
growl?
chaos
That's
of the level.
amazing.
Yeah, they give you a little
Why would you
growl.
do that to them? They're
Oh
trying
my
their
god,
best.
now I have to try to reproduce that.
Occasionally people can hear the evil, sinister laugh of
Oh,
the
that's
Reaper
great.
enemies
Of the
too.
Reaper, yeah.
I've talked to people who thought they were imagining it, and it was so good.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I've tried to keep it subtle, but yeah.
No, it worked so well.
There's so many nice little touches like that where, like Tim's pixel art in the earlier levels.
I think I would
with
have to like
your
turn off the music to hear
slightly
those.
creepy audio coming in that people aren't sure what exactly is happening. It's quite lovely.
This is the only level that uses a blue flamethrower as well, which was needed because to stop it murdering all your enemies.
Yeah, when it was a red flamethrower at first, it was killing all the wasps and making the level super easy. So
Hey, I'm okay with killing the
obviously
wasps
had to
for me.
change that, keep things on the up and up.
But it's an interesting point of contention. A lot of people think that the blue flame is unavoidable, or yeah, they kind of get a bit salty about it.
Just move around, dodge through it, do something. But I hate to use it, but get good.
Where are they? Okay, they haven't dropped down yet. I was like, I don't see 6 enemies. All right.
Everything's dead.
That was terrible. All right. This one's super
Repeater.
interesting.
This is one of my kind of pet levels. It's very indulgent technically.
Uh-huh.
It's reconstructing itself as you're playing with surprisingly little trickery. It's actually reassembling physics as you're moving around and trying to build a pathway between you and where the enemies are and everything else.
Yeah, when Tim tells you something is really real, he means it, unlike me, so you can believe him.
Well, the whole game is smoke and mirrors. That's the whole point. Like, you know, good games make you feel like you're doing things that, you know, much more complicated things than you are.
But this level really is doing horribly complicated things.
Each of those blocks can transform both into tiles and also those wall blocks, which is kind of interesting. They kind of unfold and then spread apart and reveal little canvas inners.
Didn't mean to get that.
Oh, it's so brutal.
Yeah, it was a horrible level to balance because, well, you can't.
I remember doing the audio for it was a
Didn't
bit
even
of a
see what
head
hit me.
scratcher too, because each of those things trying to trigger sounds and stuff like that, and trying to you know, do it in a way that's somehow supportive and intuitive, you know. But
Yeah, not sounding like someone dropping a bunch of transformers down some stairs.
yeah, it was tricky. What's the logic behind what it's like the path that it's creating?
So it uses a whole bunch of things. The main one is it takes your position and your velocity. So it tries to put the blocks ahead of where you're trying to move.
Right.
So as you're running around, it's kind of trying to put the blocks where you're going, but also
Yeah, I've
keep a
noticed that
path
when
to the
I
enemies.
play it, it's like I feel like, oh, I want to go there, and if you push in that direction, it builds the floor in that direction.
Yeah, so it's kind of helping you out, but
Yeah.
also restricting you.
Yeah, because it puts those sort of box things in the way.
Sometimes it can end up being extremely brutal, though, if it decides that it wants to build a wall somewhere and you don't want the wall to be there, but it's just going to build it anyway.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to S+ this one.
It actually switches between a few different template patterns throughout the level. Like, so there's a period where it starts building these kind of tetra block shapes that you have to maneuver through, and they're quite interesting to dodge when bombs are falling. And then in a later part of the level, it just stops building walls and just builds flat. So if you run out, you'll actually get into a big flat area. But if you stay in the walled area, they'll stick around. So it's kind of, you have a lot of control over what the level's going to be.
Yep.
I like that about these dynamic levels when they do that, where if you're paying attention to how the level reacts to what you do, you can control it. So it's less about you dealing with its change and more about you creating the change that you want it to make.
Like a big rule for the whole game was to try to keep everything procedural and deterministic. So it's based off your actions. So if you get a really disadvantage,
disadvantageous.
You get a really bad level shape, it's kind of...
Or bad, that works.
I think a lot of people don't realize that when they play, that based on not just this level and its shape that it's making, but also the enemy waves, where they spawn, that kind of thing, they're all based on your position, what you're doing, who you're defeating, the timing of when you defeat them. A lot of things like that are actually under your control. And as you see the players get more and more experienced, one of the coolest things that I ever saw was when the speedrunners worked out that if they defeat Embryo's waves at just the right time, just the right milliseconds, they can get the right power-ups and cut 20-30 seconds off the boss fight, and then they can try and do that to some degree in the regular levels as well. It's really, really cool.
It's like everything seems chaotic and terrible and geared against you, but you actually have control. It's a metaphor for life.
That's deep.
No, you don't actually always have control in life. But yeah, I was thinking that when Tim was talking about how the level generation looks at where you are and what speed you're going, the first thought in my mind was like, that's probably, I wonder if it manages to reuse any logic whatsoever from how enemies spawn, because enemies also clearly spawn based on where you are and what direction you're headed. Because you can actually end up screwing yourself over if you're headed in a direction and manage to pull a 180 right as enemies spawn. They'll end up spawning like twice as far away from you, because it was trying to anticipate where you were going. Alright, fourth boss. Let's see what they have to say about this.
Venom. So this is voiced by you, Nart, isn't it?
It is. It's my best impersonation of a super creepy giant spider robot that wants to destroy you.
We were contractually obligated to add a giant spider to the game because we're a video game.
And also Australian.
Yes.
I mean, he's a little bit small compared to the ones I see in my backyard, but he'll grow up. He'll get there.
He'll grow up.
One of the few instances of true bullet hell in the game, I would describe him as. A lot of the earlier stuff, like Embryo and some of the levels even, are very soft, but Venom doesn't mess around. Every pattern, every wave is just brutal way.
That's not what I want to shoot at
huge
first.
Amounts of bullets on screen, hundreds. I think you can get it up to 1,000 in one of the waves. And it's just absurd.
Yeah, I really wanted to get. I
really
wanted to play with
there.
scale for Venom, and make him feel like the largest boss. Like, he's so large he can't even interact with you.
And some of his phases too are
Oops.
had to be nerfed quite hard, but also then had to be
Shit,
brought
that's
back
not what I
and
wanted.
changed quite drastically.
That was supposed to
I learned
change.
a lot of lessons about bullet hell based on the first version of this boss that we spent a lot of time on, and I felt really bad because the concepts we were using were just not strong enough in the early versions. A lot of the bullet patterns were based on sheer number of bullets rather than
Patterns.
kind of coalescing them together. And in the future revisions, like the version that people play now, he actually fires more bullets, I think, than the earlier unnerfed version, but they're all together and create these really easily visible lines and patterns and circles that you can dodge and weave between. So learning about all that was really tricky for this level. Is there anything, any favorite moment in particular for you, Tim?
I really like when he gets up close enough to start, hooking his way up into the stage and firing his butt cannon.
Yeah, I actually quite like when the other way where because he's so big, the camera has the camera has to zoom out really far, and your character gets really small. It just makes everything seem massive. I like that.
I can't go past the moment where the drill pump comes up and plunges through the ground and just sprays out 1,000 bullets in a giant spiral.
That's in the trailer.
That's got to be one of the most iconic moments in the entire game.
One of the funnier sound design things I had to do here was choose the appropriate fart sounds for the butt cannon. So yes, there is fart sounds in there.
Good job, Jeff. The sacrifices that you've made.
Well, I now know that I have like 200 different fart sounds in my library.
The interesting thing is Venom has 8 phases because he's a spider, and it just seemed appropriate. But he loses multiple legs in a couple of phases, so he has 2 phases that aren't leg related.
Yeah.
But it was important to keep the 8. I'm all about themes.
Also, by having a large number of phases, we have the reverse situation of Justice, where now you can actually kind of shorten the phases and make them more intense and exciting and difficult in other ways, which was a fun switch up.
Venom was also a really interesting point for the storytelling. Like the game's doesn't have the most complicated story, but we were kind of leading you to Venom as the instigator, and it's the time when we actually work in a plot twist, which is pretty cool.
Quite possibly the most sinister moment there in the whole game.
Pretty brutal,
Yeah, it's very
actually.
fun introduction of a fun character that players are about to meet. And they had no real idea about, aside from the tiny hints the previous bosses all dropped about greater things at work.
Okay, I need to grab some water, so I'll be back in a minute, and then we will do the final zone. Alright, on to Zone 5.
So Centrifuge is our first intro until World 5. And I really like this level, actually. It's kind of a meat grinder of a level.
A lot of people like this level. Ow.
It's just all about throwing huge amounts of enemies at you and making you deal with them.
It's always felt to me like the most sort of traditional wave-based level to me, like because you can. I remember feeling like I could memorize the patterns, or I felt they were a little more predictable than some of the other levels.
It's also the first time the game is really that clean, traditional sci-fi in both the visual aesthetic and also the music for this world. I think is very much in that tone where the rest of the game's kind of more eclectic. Which I think is a fun change up that we take until now to go back to, yes, we can do the traditional style really well as well.
In general, each of the first levels of a world, we've tried to give you a level where you can cut loose a bit. So you go from Hive to Checkpoint to Assembly and to Centrifuge, and it's kind of it's a way to try out the new character.
This one's quite fun to play with Peanut, and when you first do that thing where you do the drill along the edge and do the circles. That's
Yeah.
quite fun to do.
Was that a bug or was that intentional when it first went in? I can't remember.
It was technically like it was a implication of the rules that I realized, like, oh, if I say that if you can go along a wall, it'll correct your trajectory. That means you're going to be able to go around in circles, and then I increased the threshold to make it more viable.
Yeah, I recall that exact moment because it was awesome and we wanted it to happen more. When it first happened, it was very shocking.
Yeah, and I remember like kind of sitting there going, is this going to break the game? And then we can kind of conclude it wasn't, so it was fine.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine. Peanut as well is... I think she's one of the most interesting characters in the game. I use this word a lot, interesting, but I think she's genuinely unique and cool across all the characters because her secondary is so mobility focused. It's not just about damage. In fact, a lot of it isn't even damage. When you pin a character and you move them across, you don't damage them until you hit a wall. So the most efficient way is often to drill an enemy right against a wall. But you're invulnerable and you damage smaller enemies along your path. So if you can drill someone across the entire stage, you can drastically change the situation that you're in. And I just really, really love that about Peanut.
This level was themed around the Gravitrons from the shows and that kind of thing, and like that whole spinning thing. I really liked it. I considered at one point spinning the camera as well, and I realized that
What? No.
A lot of that. Avoiding that.
That would be worse than Revolution if they did
probably
that.
for the best.
So I will just point out that this was my best centrifuge run ever. I just beat my own high score, probably partially aided by the fact that they increased the time bonus amount. But yeah, that was pretty good, and I was waiting to drop the chain somewhere, and I didn't. And I had some really good mind tank phases. So I'm kind of proud of myself for that. Okay, next up is one of the most interesting levels in my opinion, because it adds mechanics that are like, well, there are a lot of levels that add mechanics that aren't in any other levels, but this one adds something that's completely unique in terms of having other things that fire yellow bullets, which is the type of bullets that your characters fire. Let's see what they say.
Control. There's something I really like about this level. When I first tried it out, I found myself sort of becoming obsessed with using the little helper devices and trying to figure out the best sequence in which to use them and enable them. And every time I play it, I have my pattern that I go to. I don't think it actually is a very good thing in terms of score chasing or anything, but it's just it feels so empowering when you enable these things and you're able to cause a lot more damage when using them.
Yeah, they're super fun, especially activating the machine gun, which keeps going even after you leave. That is one of the most satisfying things across the entire game. It's just that moment where you step on it, you step off, and it's just shooting things for you.
Yeah, it's the only game, it's the only level where you get to use the stage hazards against your enemies.
And only
They're
against the
all
enemies.
there just for you. They can't hurt you in any way. Unlike, Revolution, where the spinning can be a helper, but also a hindrance just as much.
Yeah, and I really like that it comes in so late in the game as well. Like, you're heading to the home stretch.
Oh well.
And it's just a way of mixing it up again.
This was the only level that we actually put out in the game's beta and had to remove and rebuild completely because I was so unhappy with the original design I had for it. But the redesign just works so well. I'm really, really glad we took the time to do that.
Yeah, this is one of my
The
favorite
first design
levels.
was a lot simpler. It didn't have these helper bots that would shoot for you. Instead, it had different layouts that you could trigger based on walking over switches.
Interesting.
But essentially, you'd find a layout that worked best for your playstyle and your character, and then just stick to that the entire time. So, my desire to give people options and create enemy waves that were better suited for using the different different layout switches just never worked out. Whereas these helper bots, they're just great. They pop up, they shoot you, they do different things, so they all have unique purpose and useful. And as Jeff said, he has his style of how he uses them, and it might not be the most efficient, but it's like the way he wants to use them.
And the way the cooldowns are designed to kind
wanted
of
a
push
blue.
you around the level a bit. So you know, if you want to make use of all of them, you'll want to move between them at different points, which yeah, is always a good thing.
It's good with the accelerate power up because you can fly around and activate them all.
Not really.
Maximum damage.
Can't stand on two of them at once.
Play has a big impact on how you experience this level too. I personally like to play Peanut because she has that mobility on top of the accelerate. So even if you don't have it, you can still get from one area to another. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's a different style.
Oh, so you're saying the time bonus is more per zone now or something? Someone's gonna have to go update CJ's wiki, I guess. Well, I call it CJ's wiki because I think he's the one who did most of the content for it, but... yeah, like, that score shouldn't have been anywhere even close to that. Alright, next is the longest level in the game. Let's see if the commentary runs out before the level does.
Convection's a really interesting level because I had to learn a bit more about how the level design or how the level functions, like from a technical point of view, and learn how Nart and Tim put these levels together. Because I wanted the sound to trigger on the when the flaming pads light up. And it was really interesting, as Nart mentioned earlier, with the pixel grid. Basically, you know, you used, if I remember, it was what program did we use? Like a painting program or something like that to change the color of a pixel would define what state a block was in, if I remember right, or something like that.
Yeah, you could paint in how long it was going to take for it to light up, how long it would stay lit up for, and all that kind of information.
Yeah, it was. I found the system really interesting, and then having to work that into the audio triggers, and then again trying to make it so that we didn't trigger too many sounds all at once, because obviously the machine and the level has the ability to just trigger hundreds of sounds at once, and just trying to make it sort of smart. And then the level itself is so incredibly tricky because of these flaming things chasing you, especially the ones where it lights up wherever you go. That one's especially hair-raising.
I'm really glad you took the time to handcraft the audio for all the fire throughout this level, though, because
it really works.
When we were thinking about automated systems, it could have sounded semi-correct, but the way it sounds when you play the level now, the fire races from left to right, it circles around you. There's that real sense of positional audio that comes through. It just adds a ton to the feel of the level.
It does.
So
it really does.
During development in White Box, this level had kind of giant red jello cubes that would come out of the ground to represent the fire. And in my mind, the level always looked like this. This was the thing, like whenever I was playing the White Box levels, they always looked like the final game to me. I was just filling in the art as I went. But I think there was some tangible disappointment when the jello cubes went away.
I want my game to have jello.
I hand animated those jello cubes. It took me about 30 seconds, and it was great.
I want to see the jello
It's
cubes.
interesting that
Please add this to the game, devs.
A lot of the early access version of the game on YouTube and stuff, and you can watch.
Whoops, that was a bad idea.
How the way these levels used to be when we were developing the game, and how much of it has stayed true to the White Box, and that it's effectively towards the end it was an aesthetic pass that we did to finish it off, but it still plays the same.
Oh, that's bad.
One of the things I love about the pixel art approach to timing everything is that Nart was able to get this kind of real choreographed dance performance feel to the level. Like when the burners come on en masse and they just sweep across the level.
Yeah.
And it's like fast and violent, and it's just spectacular.
It really does just kind of consume you at different points, especially when it starts firing underneath you and you're running away from your own shadow essentially while having to deal with the huge flaming circles that are spiraling out everywhere. And there's just so much chaos happening, but it's all still under your control. It's pretty cool. And the other thing that's interesting about this level to me was that, like many of the levels, it became more playable, not less, as we added graphics.
Huh.
And I think that's
really
an
good.
interesting goal for the game as well, that every time we added new graphics to the game, it was to enhance the way that you played it rather than to detract or overpower you.
Yeah, so much of the art was built around visibility and information. Yeah, we really wanted to let you know what was going on.
That's a tremendously important point. And I mean, I'm not a game developer, I'm not a designer at all, but I have definitely kind of like, maybe not in a game context, but I've seen cases where like it's obvious that like when you go back to add details, it makes things noisier. And it maybe makes things harder to see that used to be really obvious before, because all of a sudden it's not as clean anymore. I guess if anything I can relate from a music perspective, because I've done some composition in the past, but that's really, like, that sounds very abnormal in a good way, but that sounds really abnormal that every time they were adding graphical detail, it was actually making things clearer, because like that seems really hard to do. So that's pretty amazing. Alright, I give no guarantees that I will even survive the next level on the first try. But let's see what happens.
Collider. So this is one of the most divergent levels in the game, and I'm really proud of that part. We introduce another android that you're facing off against, but you don't even fight her to start with. It was a really nice way of kind of bringing things full circle, I think.
This level is the bane of many people's existence.
Speedrunners
And
especially.
I don't think it's unfair to say most people would describe this as possibly the hardest level in the entire game, despite the fact that they might spend longer trying to defeat Medulla because she's just so brutal, and the level itself is so brutal.
I remember actively asking you guys to make it easier because I was finding it so frustrating to get through this level. I think especially when I was trying to S+ it, you know, because
yeah, which I still haven't done.
Really tricky.
I feel like Licorice has some of the, well, like one of my favorite tracks in the game as well.
Yeah, this music track is awesome.
Because to me, it's like it gets really, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, really video gamey there with the and I wanted the guitars to be as sort of the sound of her strength, her power, you know.
Yeah, it comes in really, really well in that semi-boss track style. It's actually a unique track as well because across the game we have whole tracks, boss tracks, which are progressive tracks, and the dynamic tracks. But Licorice is this
I don't
kind
have
of
accelerate. This is
segmented
bad.
whole track experience. So I really like that she has her own flavor, her own dynamics that go on there, and the track itself is just killer. It's definitely one of my favorites.
I always had this goal of trying to make.
Oh no! I could have got that one.
Work as both a enemy
I'm an idiot.
and a playable character, and during development it was so scary. Like we had contingency plans for if it didn't work out, but in my mind I knew how I wanted it to feel, and what I wanted to capture with it.
Yeah, there were many risks associated with this semi-boss battle. The idea of essentially playing PvP against the AI and making it work, making it fun. Especially because we did a lot of early testing on actual PvP and it was terrible. So
yeah, not the best thing. Which is a big part of why you're fighting Licorice among other robots, and so it's a resource war, you're not trying to beat Licorice, you're trying to outplay it.
And I think that leads to some of the more diverse endings to a level as well, because it can actually last an infinite amount of time so long as you're both getting batteries. It's entirely down to battery control and no sense of destruction on either player.
Yeah, it's so good though. I like, it's almost teaching people that androids are scary. Like, for the first time you understand what it's like to have an enemy that just doesn't like stop when you knock them down.
When Licorice grabs the first battery from you, and you realize that she can collect the batteries, that is terrifying. That is the darkest moment of the entire campaign.
It's so good. I love that we were able to do everything so genuinely. She powers up her main weapon using weapon orbs. She takes power-ups, and she has to keep battery to survive.
But it's still totally fair. That's the important thing about, like, when I talk about the difficulty of this game a lot, I talk about people getting angry or upset at things.
There's one thing that's not fair.
They tend to stick with it and want to defeat it because the game is never cheating you, and Licorice never cheats you. In fact,
there's one time that she cheats.
Some of the secret mechanics that work behind the scenes allow you to cheat Licorice a little bit when you're fighting over the same battery.
It's slightly stacked in your favor.
That's also true.
And she moves around. She plays just like her player avatar counterpart. She's not doing anything too different.
I think that's important, that fairness.
Her cool special ability at the end to when she's finally taken out by her battery running out, that she grabs one last bit of power by destroying all the robots at the end there. I think
There's an interesting thing. The amount of emergency battery she restores is actually based on how many enemies are on the screen.
Ha! Nice. Okay, so the one thing that the one reason I say she's not fair is if she's out of battery, but there is a battery on the level, she will not, the level will not end until that battery is collected by either you or her. That's not how batteries work for the player, so it's not how batteries should work for her either. So that's the one thing that's actually unfair about the fight. Also, man, I really tried hard to screw that up and somehow managed to grab that last battery and, like, actually beat the level in less than 3 minutes. I don't know if you saw my reactions after that. Okay, last level. Let's go. See what they have to say about the final boss.
Medulla. Now, I suppose I had every opportunity to be the voice of Medulla as the audio guy on the team, but we decided to have my daughter Ella be the voice, and yeah, I thought she did a great job. We put a lot of processing on her voice, so she doesn't really sound like herself. But yeah, it was such a cool opportunity to revisit all the other bosses and re-say their lines, but she says the same dialogue that they did.
Yeah, it's really awesome how they did that.
And so in a lot of ways that's showing that, you know, she's been in control of all the Medulla has been in charge of all the bosses all this time.
Yeah, some really neat visual storytelling as well as the actual storytelling where we're finally getting to the conclusion and having all the big reveals about the game's plot. It's not the most complicated plot, but I think it really works to sell the location and the feel of the game.
It was really nice to kind of revisit both some new mechanics, also invent new mechanics with
bad.
the dome levels, and also then revisit.
God damn it! It's right there.
The music in this level is sort of like a montage of all of the previous boss battle music.
Alright, that's fine.
With moments of unique Medulla music as well.
Yeah, it's a remix, just like the fight itself, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You're coming in, and what's old is new again, and that was very important to us to get that feeling right. I think every classic game that you can think of from the kind of era that Cactus is obviously inspired by
Boss
has
refights.
this feeling, this emotion come through at the end that you need to revisit where you've been in order to move on to new and interesting experiences. It's so brutal. She's so... Oh, I just feel like when I get through some of these phases, when I get to the phase with the homing bullets firing at you,
which I'm
my
already
heart
past.
rate increases. It doubles every time.
I was really proud of this boss fight for two reasons. Both how it contrasts with Venom, who's like being introduced as the physically largest boss, and then you go, well, how do you go larger than that? and Medulla encompasses the ship. Like, the entire stage is her body, but she's even bigger than this, and you're just seeing a fraction of it. And also how she contrasts with Licorice, where you've got an android who has all of your strengths, effectively, and then you go back to you get to finish on this big traditional bullets, chaos, action everywhere.
It's really a celebration of everything in the game, not just the bosses that you've already defeated, but all of the mechanics and systems, the bullet hell, the swirling elements, the lasers. It's a beautiful collage of all the cool things that you've enjoyed up until now in their most pure form in one fight.
Yeah, it was supposed to kind of really be a best of boss fight. Just throwing together all these elements.
But at the end of the best of, you still need something new and fresh and exciting as well, which hopefully is how people feel about the final moments. I'm not so sure.
I think it was really cool.
It was an interesting one. We were planning it out. Like, we wanted to have a fake out. We wanted to mess with the player.
And then you go back to that classic retro style.
The ether sphere. I'd like to
mysterious
visit the
ether
ether sphere.
You got one battery, you got limited enemies, and no, you can't shoot the big thing in the center. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the one
we've had some
miscue.
interesting reactions to it. Like, some people kind of really get it. Some people have either misinterpreted or been frustrated with it. But I still feel really good about how it distills the purity of what Cactus is about gameplay-wise into a short segment.
Yeah, it's 60 seconds of the purest gameplay across the entire game, which is really nice as a finisher for a boss that's also about showcasing the best elements of the entire game.
Yeah.
In this 60 seconds, you have to dodge better than you've ever dodged, shoot better than you've ever shot, use your weapons better than you've ever used them. You're kind of like swapping between them, and it's just this kind of perfect moment of when you get to the end, you should feel like you're the best you that you've ever been across the entire campaign.
Yeah, it's like the final exam. You've been training the whole game for this.
I from a music perspective, it gets the heaviest that the soundtrack gets. The fastest, most full-on, intense.
Very
music
brutal,
bit
very
there.
noisy,
Crazy, weird distorted choir samples going on, and super fast guitars, and at one point, like, I know when I was mixing it, it was the whole, like, my system was just like, everything was just going full on and on the edge of overloading and stuff, but it felt appropriate for the moment.
I think it's the most intense song in the game, and it's great because it just builds steadily for a whole minute, and then kind of climaxes.
And after that climax, the game is done. You get to move on to the complete screen, and with that, our developer commentary is also done. I hope you've enjoyed listening.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time.
There better be a next time, guys. You say that. Damn, there was some comment I was gonna make, and now I forget what it was. But, oh, yeah, so, like, the Ether Sphere got nerfed at one point. Like, I actually had a lot of trouble. When I first played this game, I actually, like, took a hiatus from the final boss because the Ether Sphere was whooping my ass. It did not help that I was playing as Coral, because of the size of that room and the fact that you have to kill enemies within 60 seconds and Coral's limited range of fire, it actually makes it kind of harder to clean up everything. So it took me, like, I had to come back to the game a couple weeks later and finally beat it. I went back and, like, did more, like, score attacking on earlier levels and stuff in between. But they nerfed it sometime last year. They made the enemies easier to kill in it so that it takes less time to kill them. But yeah, no, so, like, the way that last area works is there's no weapon energy pellets anymore. There's no power-ups anymore. There are no power-ups, period. If you go down, you gain your weapon energy back really fast, but yeah, that's what they're talking about, where it's like the purest form of the game. It's you, your level 3 weapon, and your secondary against all these enemies. There's no battery drops, there's no power-ups. You just gotta deal with it and beat it within 60 seconds. The one unfortunate thing is, like, because of the dev commentary, it ducks all of the audio and music, so, like, when they talk about the music for the level and stuff, you can't really hear it right then and there. Of course, you can find other playthroughs, including my own, elsewhere on the internet and Twitch, if you need a reference for that, if you don't have the game. But you should really, if you're a fan of top-down shooters and you don't have this game, you should absolutely get this game. If it's if shmups are your kind of thing and you like, you know, replaying things for score attack and whatnot, like, I have said that, like, we were joking in the Discord for Assault Android Cactus yesterday night that Assault Android Cactus killed arcade games because the Nex Machina devs, Housemarque, actually closed shop after Nex Machina didn't sell as well as they would have liked. And they basically declared arcade games as dead. And I'm like, arcade games aren't dead. You just, like, they just evolved. Because, like, to me, like, I tried Nex Machina. I beat the game on some difficulty level within, like, an hour and change. And then, like, tried the next difficulty up and just found that I didn't enjoy it in terms of replaying it. So, like, and also it was very visually, like, hard to distinguish things sometimes. So I ended up refunding Nex Machina. And I absolutely say that, like, I expected it to hold up better than it did after I played Assault Android Cactus and saw what an arcade game can be in, you know, year 201X. I mean, this came out a few years ago, but Nex Machina was last year. So, like, that's the thing, is, like, this has so much replay value despite this not even having difficulty levels. The devs actually have a talk that they gave somewhere where they actually had the idea of difficulty levels and then scrapped it. And instead they have the rank system, so that you can challenge yourself to get better based on scoring and not falling and not getting knocked down and not breaking chain. And I think that works really well and caters to the kind of people who want to play these games. And, like, the game just, you almost, I mean, like, with the possible exception of Collider, with the licorice fight, you really almost never feel like the game was unfair to you. You feel like there was something within your control to do better, to actually overcome the challenge that you lost against. And that's what this game feels like. And then it feels really good to actually prove that, yeah, you were right. You could overcome that challenge. And this game just does that tremendously well. And anybody who likes shoot-'em-ups and such games should absolutely give this a try. There is a demo on Steam, so absolutely try that out if you are interested. The game normally runs $15. I think that's plenty. Like, I think that's a worthy price for it, given how much replay value there potentially is in this game. I mean, I've played this for how many? Oh, I'm surprised that actually, when I shift tab within Steam, within the game, it actually cuts the audio. Let me see how many hours I've played this game. And I haven't played it that much. I've played it 309 hours. And that's nothing compared to some people like Transparent Blue. Yeah, that's good for that too. That's cool that you do come back to it for that. But yeah, it's a really good game with 3 core developers that, like, the 3 people you heard on that call, Tim, Nart, and Jeff. Tim and Nart were well, Tim was like the main developer, and also, like, I guess he was responsible for, like, artwork and stuff too. Nart is, like, game design and stuff. I'm not sure how much Nart does in terms of development. And then Jeff was mainly the audio guy. But Jeff did both the music, the sound, and the sound design, and, like, integrating it. Like, you heard him talking about in, like, Convection, Zone 5, Level 3. Where, like, he had to actually kind of, like, integrate with how Tim was choreographing the level and the jets that light up to make sure that the audio worked with it and matched it and also didn't, like, overwhelm it. And it's just freaking amazing that much, you know, that these guys poured that much effort into this game. It absolutely deserves, you know, $15 out of your wallet. And you can easily get way more than 15 hours of gameplay out of this. I mean, like, yes, if you're good at this, then the initial playthrough of the game will only take you, like, 2 or 3 hours. But then there's replaying it for rank, There's Daily Drive, which is new every day. There's Infinity Drive and Boss Rush, which unlock after you beat the game. Where Boss Rushes, you fight all 6 bosses in succession. Or 6 bosses. No, you don't fight Licorice. You fight all 5 bosses in succession, which is a bit of a different experience because it means you go into, like, Vespula and later bosses with carryover weapon level and power-ups. It actually makes Vespula arguably easier because you can have your weapon almost fully powered. Like, you will reach weapon level 3 within the first phase of Vespula's fight. Infinity Drive, despite the name, actually does have an end, but there are very few people who have reached it. Actually, let's see. Global list. Yeah, so we've got 6 people who have actually, wait a minute. Oh yeah, okay, I was like, where's Dragonos? It's right there, I can't read, sorry. I was like, Dragonos just beat it, like, this morning or something. So yeah, it's got leaderboards for all the levels. Obviously, you can, like, challenge yourself to S+ all the levels, and maybe even S+ it with all androids. And the map actually tracks that, because, like, if we go into... So, like, here you can see there's S+'s around everything except Collider, because I don't have the patience to S+ Collider. And then in the first zone, you'll notice that these S+'s are purple. That is because I have S+'d it with every character. So the game actually does distinguish that. Oh, you had it? I didn't realize you had beat it a few months ago. Okay. Well, congratulations on beating it again, anyway. I think the highest I got was 33, because I never fight Dark Embryo. I never get to 32 at that level, and even if I did, I don't think I would survive it. I would need to actually go, like, practice Dark Embryo. But anyway, yeah, that was the dev commentary. Hope you all enjoyed hearing some insights from the developers. I sure did. Definitely go check this out if you haven't already. Thanks everyone for hanging out.